بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. I welcome you back to the second class or second series of lectures that are being held in this series, in which we are studying the biographies of some of the most eminent scholars of hadith from the book Taqdimatul-Marifah بكتاب al-Jarh wat-Tadeel للإمام of the Imam al-Hafiz Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi rahimahullah, who passed away in the year 327 after the Hijrah. In our previous class, previous Saturday, we started with the biography of the great Imam of the first center for hadith studies, which was Medina, the Imam Malik ibn Anas rahimahullah, from the Imams of the Tabi'in, Imam Ahl-Madina, Imam of the people of Medina. Then we moved on to the second center of hadith sciences and studies in that time, which was Mecca, and studied the biography of the Imam of that region of Mecca and his people, Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahullah, also from the Tabi'in. Now today, Imam Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi rahimahullah, he moves us in this book Taqdimatul-Marifah from the area of al-Hijaz, which contains the Haramain, Medina and Mecca. We move now to another area which was flourishing with hadith and his sciences and his studies at that time, the area of Iraq. And in the area of Iraq, we will focus on two cities that were major centers for hadith studies and sciences at that time. First, we will start with the city of Al-Kufa, and we will study the biography of its Imam in those times, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. Then we will move on to the other major center of hadith and studies in those times, which is Al-Basra in Iraq, the city of Basra, and we will inshallah shed light on the biography of the great Imam of Basra, Imam Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj. For these are the two biographies that we'll cover today inshallah. So we'll start with the biography of Sufyan al-Thawri, al-Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, just as Imam Ibn Abi Hatim has mentioned in his book Taqdimatul-Marifah after mentioning the biography of Imam Malik and Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna. We will start off by mentioning the name and lineage of this great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. He was Abu Abdullah. His kunya is Abu Abdullah Sufyan ibn Sa'id ibn Masruq. His name is Sufyan, his father's name is Sa'id, and his grandfather's name is Masruq. Sufyan ibn Sa'id ibn Masruq al-Thawri. And al-Thawri, this is an ascription to one of his great grandfathers, whose name was Thawr. His great grandfather's, his name was Thawr. He was Thawr ibn Abdi Manat ibn Ud ibn Tabikha ibn Ilyas ibn Mudar ibn Nizar ibn Ma'ad ibn Adnan. This was his great grandfather, and this grandfather, Thawr ibn Abdi Manat, he meets with the lineage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Ilyas ibn Mudar. As we all know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is from the great grandchildren of Ma'ad ibn Adnan. So Imam Sufyan al-Thawri's lineage, it meets with the lineage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Ilyas ibn Mudar. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he is Shaykh al-Islam. those who have been described with this great description of being from the Shaykh al-Islam, Imam al-Huffaz, the Imam of the great memorizers and precise preservers of the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidul Ulama al-Amilin fi zamani, the leader and the foremost of the scholars who acted upon their knowledge in their time period, as Imam al-Zahabi has described him in his great book Siyar Alam al-Nubala. As far as his birth, then he was born in the year 97 after the Hijrah. He was born in the year 97 after the Hijrah in the city of Kufa, as we just mentioned. He was born in the city of Kufa in Iraq. And he was raised in a religious Islamic household filled with knowledge. For really, his father, Sa'id ibn Masruq, he was from the great Muhaddithin of Kufa and from the Thiqat narrators from the Hadith, Thiqat narrators of Hadith who narrated Hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the most trustworthy and reliable of narrators. And he was from the students, his father was from the students of the great Tabi'een such as al-Sha'bi and Khaythama ibn Abdul Rahman. So his father is counted to be from amongst the smaller Tabi'een, the younger of the Tabi'een. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri himself, he is from the major atba'u Tabi'een. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he is from the major atba'u Tabi'een. We mentioned in our previous class that Imam Malik, the Imam of Medina, and Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna, the Imam of Makkah, they are also from the atba'u Tabi'een. But as we will see, inshallah, when we commence this biography, that they are considered from the younger of the atba'u tabi'een because they were born and died a few decades later than Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah. Sufyan al-Thawri died before Imam Malik and Sufyan ibn Uyayna by 10 or 20 years approximately. So he is considered from the major atba'u tabi'een. So he was raised in this great household where his father was from a scholar of hadith, from the precise memorizers and reliable narrators of hadith who directed him to this path of knowledge and guided him and was a reason for him for seeking this path. Also his mother, the mother of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, she was also a pious woman. And she motivated her son to seek this path of seeking knowledge and to seek the knowledge of hadith by saying, Ya bunayya utlub al-ilm wa ana akfika bi maghzali. That when Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he reached the age where he was able to seek knowledge, she ordered him and directed him to seek the knowledge of hadith and of Islam. And she said, I will take responsibility of your financial affairs while you seek knowledge. I will spend upon you by she used to sew clothes for the women of that area. So she said that I will support you with the income that I make by way of this profession. So such was the righteous household that Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah was raised in, that allowed him to embark on this path of seeking knowledge and becoming from the great imams, from the imams of the Muslims, as we will mention. And in this is a lesson for all of us for how we should also raise and cultivate upon our children upon the love and motivate them to seek knowledge, especially the knowledge of the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To the point that Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he himself benefited from this righteous upbringing later on in his life, and he used to advise the people with the same upbringing that he went through in his youth by saying, يَنْبَغِي لِلرَّجُلِ أَنْ يُكْرِهَا وَلَدَهُ عَلَى طَلَبِ الْحَدِيثِ فَإِنَّهُ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْهُ. That verily it is befitting that a person, a parent, he directs his child to seek the knowledge of hadith, for verily he is responsible regarding him, and he'll be asked regarding this responsibility by Allah Azza wa Jal. This was the first reason that allowed Imam Sufyan al-Thawri to embark on this path of knowledge and to reach this high level in the science of hadith, and in the sciences of Islam in generality. The second reason was the reason that we mentioned at the beginning of our lecture, that Kufa was one of the major centers of hadith sciences at that time. Several muhaddithin, scholars of hadith, they resided in the area of Kufa, even though sadly today it is known as a center for the people of innovation and misguidance. But at that time, Kufa was still considered one of the centers of hadith studies in which several of the great scholars of hadith resided. So this also allowed Imam Sufyan al-Thawri to embark on this path and to benefit from the scholars in that area. The third reason is his personal exertion and efforts that he undertook in order to attain this knowledge and reach this high level, and the blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal upon him by way of granting him exemplary memorization capabilities and a high degree of intellect and understanding. And this was well known from him from his youth. The great scholars of hadith from the tabi'een, from his teachers who saw him and taught him, they witnessed these signs upon him from a young age. From that is what Abu al-Musanna, he says, سمعت الناس بمرو يقولون قد جاء الثوري فخرجت أنظر إليه فإذا هو غلام قد بقل وجهه. That Imam Sufyan al-Thawri traveled to the area of Maro, in Khurasan. So the people, they came out of their residences and their places of dwelling to see this great Imam who has come to them, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. So Imam Abu al-Musanna, he says that I also went out to look at this great Imam. So I saw that he was a young man whose beard had just come out, whose hair, the hair of his beard had just come out. This shows the great status that this great Imam reached at a very young age. From that is this great statement of Imam Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi from his foremost students, from the students of Sufyan al-Thawri. He says, Ra'a Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i Sufyan al-Thawri muqbilan faqala wa ataynahu al-hukma sabiyya. That Imam Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i, who's from the great Imams of the Tabi'een, around whom the asanid, the chains of narration of ahadith revolve. In several ahadith you will find the name of this great Imam Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i, and he was from the foremost teachers of Sufyan al-Thawri, as we'll mention soon. So when he would see Sufyan al-Thawri, his student, come to him to enter and attend his gathering of hadith, he would recite this ayah, وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ sabiyya, that Allah Ta'ala revealed for Isa alayhi salam, that Allah Ta'ala had granted him wisdom and knowledge when he was a young child, Sabi, when he was a young child. So he would use this ayah for Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, that Allah Ta'ala has granted him this knowledge and understanding at a young age. He reached the highest level of memorization and capability in precision of safeguarding knowledge, especially the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the point that he used to say, "Inni la amurru bil ha'ik fa asuddu udhuni makhafatan ahfadha ma yaqul." He used to say that verily I used to walk in the streets where buying and selling, the marketplace where buying and selling used to occur, or where I used to find ha'ik, those people who used to sew and sell clothes. So I used to close my ears, I used to block my ears out of fear that I would memorize their speech. Such was the level of precision and memory that he reached, that he would hear something and he would memorize it just by hearing it. So he used to close his ears so as not to fill his memory with speech that is of no benefit. He also used to say, مَسْتَوْدَعْتُ قَلْبِي شَيْئًا فَخَانَنِي, that I have not put anything to memory in my heart except that I was not able to recall it. I never put anything in memory in my heart except that I was always able to recall it. It never deceived me. It never fled me. It was always with me. Such was the level of memorization that he reached. To the point his great student, Imam Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, rahimahullah, he says, كنت أقعد إلى سفيان الثوري فيحدث فأقول ما بقي من علمه شيء إلا وقد سمعته ثم أقعد عنده مجلسا آخر فيحدث فأقول ما سمعت من علمه شيئا. Such was the high level of memory that he reached, and the quantity and amount of ahadith of Prophet Muhammad that he had memorized. This great Imam Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, he said that I used to attend the gatherings of Sufyan ath-Thawri rahimahullah, where he would narrate ahadith. So I would attend the gathering, and by the time I leave this gathering, from the quantity of ahadith that he would narrate to us in that gathering, I would say that he has no knowledge left that I have not heard. He has narrated to us every single hadith that he has memorized and that he knows. Then I would come and attend another gathering, and I would hear him narrate a hadith that I never heard in the previous gathering. So I would say that verily I have not heard from his knowledge anything yet, from the great quantity of ahadith and precision in memory that he reached. As far as him seeking knowledge, we mentioned that he was guided and directed by his two great parents to seek this knowledge from a young age, and he undertook great vast journeys and travels for the seeking of hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And was he like us today, that one of us attends a course for a few days or a few weeks or a few months or even for a few years, and then says that I have reached the pinnacle of this knowledge and I have now reached a level that I do not need to learn and continue to seek knowledge? Let's see what this great Imam from the Imams of the Muslims, rahimahullah, he said. He says, لا نزال نتعلم العلم ما وجدنا من يعلمنا ما وجدنا من يعلمنا, that we will not cease to seek the knowledge of Islam as long as we find those who are willing to teach us. As long as we find those who are willing to teach us. Teach us until when? Until death. He says, أنا في هذا الحديث منذ 60 سنة. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah says that I have been seeking this knowledge of hadith for a period of how many days or how many weeks or how many months or a few years? No, he says I've been seeking this knowledge of hadith for a period of 60 years. For a period of 60 years, which is a lifetime for many of us, if we reach that time period of 60 years. From the great examples of this is what Farqad, he says that دخلوا على سفيان الثوري في مرضه الذي مات فيه فحدثه رجل بحديث فعجبه وضرب يده إلى تحت فراشه فأخرج ألواحا له فكتب ذلك الحديث. Farqad, he says that some of the students of hadith, the scholars of hadith, they entered upon Sufyan al-Thawri while he was reclining on his deathbed, a few moments before his death, while he was in his disease and sickness that caused his death. So one of those students and scholars who entered upon him, he mentioned or narrated a hadith in that gathering while he's reclining on his deathbed in that state of sickness. So Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he had heard a hadith that he never heard. He heard a hadith that he had never heard. So he immediately reached under his bed where he was reclining and took out some pieces of paper, some scrolls in which he wrote that hadith. This is on his deathbed, as we'll see, when he was 80 plus years of age. فقالوا له على هذه الحال منك. Yani they became amazed and they said, even in this state and at this period of time, at this age, you are still seeking the knowledge of hadith, you are still writing hadith. So he said, إنه حسن إن بقيت فقد سمعت حسنا وإن مت فقد كتبت حسنا. That verily the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is virtue, is nobility, is goodness. If Allah Ta'ala cures me from this illness and sickness and I stay alive, then I have heard goodness and virtue. And if I were to die, then I would have written and preserved virtue and goodness. So such was the zeal of these great Imams to seek knowledge until their deathbeds. From the great shuyukh and teachers of this great Imam in his vast travels and in his great efforts of seeking knowledge is that he met a great number of the scholars of the tabi'een, rahimahumullah. Imam al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah, he mentions that he heard from more than 600 teachers and shuyukh from the great scholars of this nation, from the great muhaddithin. And the foremost of these teachers, the most highest level of these teachers, they heard ahadith and they narrated to him ahadith on Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu and Jarir ibn Abdullah and Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhum, meaning that he heard from the highest level of the tabi'een who heard ahadith from Abu Huraira, Jarir ibn Abdullah, Abdullah ibn Abbas and such great Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. From his major teachers of Sufyan al-Thawri is Habib bin Abi Thabit and Salama ibn Kuhail and Ziyad ibn Ilaqa and Amr ibn Murrah and Muhammad ibn al-Munkadir and other great scholars from the tabi'een, other great scholars from the major tabi'een. As far as his students, then the students of hadith, they traveled from far and wide to come to him, to hear hadith from him, to attend his gatherings. So his students reached a number that cannot be enumerated. The students of this great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri are such great in numbers that they cannot be enumerated. From them are some of his teachers, as we mentioned, for Imam Malik and Sufyan ibn Uyayna, that which gives proofs to their great stature and the high level they reached in Islam and in the science of hadith is that some of their teachers themselves heard and learned a hadith from them and narrated it by way of their student. So same with Sufyan al-Thawri, some of his teachers and those who passed before him, they heard hadith from him and narrated it from him, such as the great Imam al-Amash, the great Imam of Kufa, Sulaiman ibn Mihran al-Amash, around whom also the chains of narrations of a hadith revolve around. You will find the name al-Amash in countless asanid and chains of narrations of a hadith. From them is Imam al-Awza'i and Mis'ar ibn Kidam and Shu'ba ibn al-Hajjaj, who we will cover inshallah in a second session in this lecture, the great Imam of Basra. All of them heard hadith from this great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. After them, Imam Malik, Zuhair ibn Muawiyah, and others from his contemporaries. Al-Mubarak ibn Sa'id rahimahullah, he says that رأيت عاصم بن أبي النجود عاصم بن بهدلة وكان شيخا جليا يجي إلى سفيان الثوري يستفتيه ويقول يا سفيان أتيتنا صغيرا وأتيناك كبيرا. That this great Imam Asim ibn Abi Najud, Asim ibn Bahdala, Asim ibn Bahdala. Anyone knows who this narrator is? He is from Asim ibn Bahdala, and he is also known by the kunya of his father, Asim bin Abi Najud. He is, in addition to being the narrator of hadith and from the scholars of hadith, he is from the foremost imams of the qira'ah of the Quran. His recitation and mode of recitation is the one that we recite the Quran in today, or a large part of the Muslim Ummah today recites the recitation by way of this great Imam, Riwayat Hafs ibn Asim. Riwayat Hafs ibn Asim. We recite the Quran or a great large chunk of the Muslim nation recites the Quran by way of this mode of recitation of Hafs on the authority of Asim. Who is Asim? He is this, Asim ibn Abi Najud, Asim ibn Bahdala. He says, Mubarak ibn Sa'id, he says that Asim ibn Bahdala, when he had reached the pinnacle of knowledge, and he was a sheikh, a great scholar who was a leader in his fields, he used to come to Sufyan al-Thawri and ask him questions regarding matters of the religion, ask him fatawa, ask him questions regarding matters of the religion. And he used to say, "Oh Sufyan, verily you came to us when you were little, when you were young." Asim ibn Bahdala is from one of the teachers and shuyukh of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah. He says, you came to us to seek knowledge when you were young, and now when you have reached this high level, we have come to you to seek knowledge from you when you're old. When you're old, giving proof to the fact that some of the teachers, the great teachers and shuyukh of Sufyan al-Thawri also narrated a hadith, heard a hadith, and then narrated it from their student Sufyan al-Thawri. And from his other students, from those who came in the generation after him, from the Tabi'ul Atba are the great Imams Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi and Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak and Abu Ishaq al-Fazari and Sufyan ibn Uyayna and other than them. Then we move on to some of the statements of the great scholars of this nation in praise of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, and in mentioning his great status in this science, the science of hadith. Imam Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj and Sufyan ibn Uyayna and Abu Asim and Yahya ibn Ma'in and other than them from the great scholars of hadith, they have all united in saying Sufyan al-Thawri Amirul Mu'minin fil Hadith. Sufyan al-Thawri is from the leaders of the believers in hadith, and this is a ascription that very few scholars of hadith have been described with, Amirul Mu'minin fil Hadith. Imam Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak rahimahullah, from the foremost students of Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, "Katabtu an alf wa mi'a shaykh ma katabtu an afdal min Sufyan." That I have verily written hadith and knowledge from 14 or 100,000 shuyukh, or 1100 shuyukh. From 1,100 shuyukh, I have not written hadith from someone higher in knowledge in this science than Sufyan al-Thawri. And Shu'bah, his contemporary, whose biography we'll cover inshallah in the second part of this lecture, the Imam of Basra, he used to say, Sufyan ahfadhu minni, that Sufyan al-Thawri, verily he is he has memorized more than me. He has memorized more than me. And this was from the piety that these great scholars acted upon in their knowledge, that they used to give preference and precedence to their contemporaries and other scholars. He said that he is he has memorized more than me. And Abdul Aziz, he says that قال رجل لشعبة خالفك سفيان فقال دمغتني. That Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, the great scholar of hadith, as we will learn soon inshallah, he was narrating a hadith. So one of the people in that gathering, he said, verily Sufyan al-Thawri has opposed you in this narration. The chain of narration that you have narrated this hadith by, Sufyan al-Thawri has opposed you. So he said, Damaghtani, yani you have caused me concern, and you have hurt me to a point that it has hurt and caused damage to my brain. Meaning that Sufyan al-Thawri has opposed me, so this has caused me great deal of concern that I am incorrect in this narration. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah reached the highest pinnacle in Islam and in the sciences of Islam. The great Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he says rahimahullah, atadri manil imam? Al-Imam Sufyan al-Thawri la yataqaddamuhu ahadun fi qalbi. Imam Ahmad, he says, he asked his students and his companions, do you know who is an imam? He says the Imam is Sufyan al-Thawri. No one takes precedence over him in my heart. No one takes precedence over him in my heart. And Imam Ahmad in this position of his followed the position of his teacher and the great Sheikh Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahullah, who used to say that lan tara bi'aynayka mithal Sufyan al-Thawri hatta tamut. He used to say to his students, from them Imam Ahmad, that you will really not see anyone like Sufyan al-Thawri in his knowledge and in his piety and other affairs. You will not see anyone like him until you die. Until you die in our era, you will not see anyone similar to him. Bishr al-Hafi, he says, كان الثوري عندنا إمام الناس. That Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, in our era, he was the Imam of all of the Muslims. He was the Imam of all of the Muslims. And how did Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, how did he reach this great status and this position near these great Imams? Imam Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj answers this question by saying, Sada Sufyanu nasa bil wara' wal ilm. That really Sufyan al-Thawri, he reached this position and he took precedence over all the people in his era by way of two things. By way of piety and fear of Allah. As we will see inshallah in our coming points, the piety and fear of Allah Ta'ala that this great Imam possessed, and by way of knowledge. So it is not enough that a person has knowledge and he does not act upon that knowledge. These great Imams, they reached these great levels by way of striving to gain knowledge and then acting upon that knowledge. Then we move on to our next point, which is mentioning some of the life events and some of the positions and occurrences that happened with this Imam, which we can reflect upon and ponder. Mut al-Balkhi, he says that أهديت لسفيان الثوري ثوبا فرده علي قلت له يا أبا عبد الله لست أنا ممن يسمع الحديث حتى ترده علي. That he says that I gifted Sufyan al-Thawri a thobe, a piece of clothing. I gifted him a thobe, so he returned it to me. He did not accept this gift and he returned it to me. So I said, O Abu Abdullah, O Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, I am not from those people who attend your gathering to hear your ahadith, the ahadith that you convey and teach and narrate. I am not one of the students of hadith who attend your gatherings of hadith, so that you return this thobe upon me. So he says, علمت أنك ليس ممن يسمع الحديث ولكن أخوك يسمع مني الحديث فأخاف أن يلين قلبي لأخيك أكثر مما يلين لغيره. So he said that I know that you are not from the students who attend my gatherings of hadith, but your brother, your blood brother, he attends my gathering and he learns hadith from me and he hears hadith from me. So I fear that by way of me accepting this gift from you, my heart will become more lenient towards your brother. My heart will become more lenient towards your brother more than the other students that are present in that gathering. So such was their piety and safeguarding of the religion in ensuring that nothing would enter their hearts that would cause them to diminish the responsibility of conveying this knowledge with ikhlas, with sincerity to Allah Azza wa Jal. Qabisa, he says, ما جلست مع سفيان مجلسا إلا ذكرت الموت وما رأيت أحدا كان أكثر ذكرا للموت منه. That he says, I didn't attend, Qabisa, one of the students of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, I did not attend the gathering of Sufyan al-Thawri except that he made me remember death. And I did not see or attend any shuyukh and any of my teachers' gatherings who was more reminding of that than Sufyan al-Thawri. Then Sufyan al-Thawri. Ali ibn Fudail, he says, رأيت سفيان الثوري ساجدا حول البيت فطفت سبعة أشواط قبل أن يرفع رأسه. He says that I saw Sufyan al-Thawri in a state of sajda, prostration, while I started my tawaf around the Kaaba in Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. And I completed the tawaf, the 7 circles around the Kaaba, and I still found Sufyan al-Thawri in the state of prostration, in the state of sajda, prolonging his sujood in his prayers. Marwan ibn Muawiyah, he says, شهدت سفيان الثوري وسألوه عن مسألة في الطلاق فسكت وقال إنما هي الفروج. That he says, I witnessed some of the people, some of the students asking Sufyan al-Thawri regarding an issue that concerned divorce, that concerned matters of divorce. So this great Imam who had reached the pinnacle in the knowledge of the sciences of hadith, he remained silent. He did not answer, and he said, verily speaking about matters of divorce, matters of the private part are an extremely difficult matter. He remained silent and he did not answer the questioner. Ibn Asbat, he says, سئل الثوري وهو يشتري عن مسألة فقال للسائل دعني فإن قلبي عند درهمي. Ibn Asbat, he says that some of the students, some of the people, they asked Sufyan al-Thawri, and he was purchasing something in the marketplace. He was buying, selling, purchasing something. So they asked him regarding a matter of the religion. So he told them to leave him, to not ask him, because his concentration was on buying whatever he was buying and purchasing at that time, for his heart was attached with that matter at that time. From this we learn how these scholars took the utmost of precaution and did not rush, even though the great knowledge that they possessed and the great level that they reached in knowledge, that they did not rush towards answering people and speaking in the matters of the religion, especially in times where they were distracted or they were busy with other matters. Today we see the smallest of the students of knowledge speaking about grave matters relating to Muslims and the Islamic Ummah while he's driving, while he's eating, while he's reclining on his bed, as if it is the easiest of pastimes. So this was the great utmost precaution that these great Imams took in these matters. Then we move on to the next topic, which is the Aqidah, the creed, the i'tiqad, the creed and belief system of this great Imam, and his position in matters of creed and in matters of differentiating this creed from the creed of the people of innovation and misguidance. And we will reiterate this point, as we mentioned in our previous lecture for Imam Malik and Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahumullah, that these great scholars of the Salaf, they are all united in these matters of creed. They are all upon this creed of Ahl-Hadith, of Ahl-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah, upon the Salafi creed, and they are all united in these matters. There's no difference amongst them in these matters. For example, in the matter of Iman, Imam Abdul Razzaq as-San'ani, he says, سمعت مالكا والأوزاعي وابن جريج والثوري ومعمرا يقولون الإيمان قول وعمل يزيد وينقص. And we mentioned the statement in the biography of Imam Malik also, to show that all of these great Imams from the Imams of the Salaf were unified in these matters. He says that I heard my teachers from the great Imams of the Muslims, such as Imam Malik and Awza'i and Ibn Jurayj and Sufyan al-Thawri and Ma'mar ibn Rashid and other than them, they all were unified in saying that Iman is speech and action, and it increases and it decreases, whereby opposing the misguided sects that arise in those times and still exist amongst us from the Murji'ah and the Khawarij. Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, he says, كان سفيان ينكر على من يقول العبادات ليست من الإيمان. The Sufyan al-Thawri, he used to refute those who used to say that the acts of worship, actions are not part of Iman, are not part of Iman, because the Murjiya, they say that actions are not part of Iman. So he used to refute this deviated group and those people who make this false claim. From his creed in the chapter or in the aspect of al-asma wa sifat, the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. An example of that is Ma'dan, he says, سألت الثوري عن قوله تعالى وهو معكم أينما كنتم. That I asked Sufyan al-Thawri regarding this statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala is with you wherever you are. Allah Ta'ala is with you wherever you are. So he asked him regarding this statement, so he said, قال الثوري علمه, that Allah's knowledge is with you wherever you are. So this was the creed of these great Imams, that Allah Ta'ala, He is mustawi upon His arsh, above the seven heavens, and He is with us by way of His knowledge and by way of His aid for the believers.
Who said the statement about ibadah?
Sufyan, Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. So this is a refutation of all those misguided people and misguided groups and sects who claim that Allah Ta'ala is everywhere. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, a'udhu billah, is everywhere. But the creed of Ahlul-Hadith, of Ahlul-Sunnah, of these great Imams of the Salaf, is that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is separate from His creation. He is above the seven heavens, mustawi on His arsh. He was asked regarding the ahadith that have come with the attributes, sifat of Allah Azza wa Jal. So he said, أَمِّرُّوهَا كَمَا جَاءَتْ, that move them along, pass them along, believe in them according to their apparent meanings. Believe in them according to their apparent meanings, not making ta'wil of them. We find today a large portion of the Muslim nation, they have followed the creed of the Ash'ari. They are upon the Ash'ari creed that makes ta'wil, distortion of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. But here we find these great Imams, as we mentioned for Imam Malik and Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna, and now for Imam al-Thawri, they were all united on this matter of creed, that the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran and the Sunnah, they are to be accepted upon their apparent meanings, without making ta'wil of them and distorting them. From the matters of creed that all these Imams are united in, and Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, is matters related to the Sahaba, the companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, من قدم على أبي بكر وعمر أحدا فقد أرزى على 12,000 من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم توفي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو عنهم راضٍ. That whoever gives precedence to someone over Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, then he has rarely disparaged 12,000 from the companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon whom the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and he was pleased with them. And he was pleased with them. And this, of course, is a refutation of the deviant, misguided sects who arose and who are present, that gave precedence to Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu over Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, such as the Rafida, the Shia, and other than them. From his matters of belief in which he is united with all of the great Imams is matters related to at-Tasawwuf and the Sufiya. We mentioned in our previous class regarding Sufyan ibn Uyayna the correct position of az-Zuhud. That Zuhud is not what the Sufis and the Sufiya have spread amongst the people, that it is to refrain from the halal. It is to refrain from the halal, to not eat and to not drink and to not wear good clothes, to punish yourself by staying away from the halal, to not get married, to not get on modes of transportation and other deviated positions they have taken in the name of zuhud. We mentioned that Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he mentioned in our previous class that az-zuhdu fima harram Allah, that zuhud is in that which Allah Ta'ala has prohibited, has made haram. Staying away from the prohibited matter, this is the true zuhud. And then he gave the examples of the prophets and messengers, that they ate, that they drank, that they rode modes of transportation, that they got married, and they are from the foremost of the zuhad. They are from the foremost of the zuhad. So here we will find Sufyan ath-Thawri also refuting the Sufiya and their distorted position regarding zuhud. He says in one of his sayings that كان المال فيما مضى يكره فأما اليوم فهو ترس المؤمن, that wealth and money for in times that have passed, it was something that was disliked, but today it is from the shield of a believer. It is a shield of a believer. How is it a shield? He says in another statement, لأن أخلف عشرة آلاف درهم أحاسب عليها أحب إلي من أن أحتاج إلى الناس, that if I were to die leaving 10,000 dirham, which was a great amount in that time, 10,000 dirham that I would leave at my death, that Allah Ta'ala would take me to account for, it is more beloved to me than me living in a state of poverty where I am dependent upon the people and asking them for financial assistance, like the Sufis do, and label that as zuhud. And he used to eat the best of foods. This great Imam, rahimahullah, Sufyan ath-Thawri, showed us the true zuhud by eating the best of food that would enable him and help him in this path of seeking knowledge, that enabled him to preserve the ahadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to travel these vast distances. A person who does not eat, who does not feed himself, then it is no way that he can take and undertake these vast journeys in the preservation of the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is no way that he can worship Allah Ta'ala properly. So one of the examples is a statement of his student Imam Abdul-Razzaq al-San'ani, the great Imam of Yemen, who authored the book Al-Musannaf. He says, لما قدم سفيان علينا طبخت له قدر سكباج, that Sufyan ath-Thawri traveled to us to Yemen. He traveled to us to Yemen. So when he came to Yemen and entered my place of residence, I cooked for him one of the best forms of meat that was available. Sikbaj, a meat cooked with various forms of vegetables and other than them. So I cooked for him. فَأَكَلَ ثُمَّ أَتَيْتُهُ بِزَبِيبَ الطَّائِفِ فَأَكَلَ ثُمَّ قَالَ يَا عَبْدَ الرَّزَّاقِ اعْلِفِ الْحِمَارَ وَكُدَّهُ. So he ate this meat that I had cooked for him. Then I came to him with the best of the oils from the area of Taif, south of Mecca. So he drank and ate that too. Then he said, "Oh Abdul Razzaq," as a means of joking, he said that, "Oh Abdul Razzaq, the himar, or the donkey, has become full, and he has eaten and drinking. Now he is full. ثُمَّ قَامَ يُصَلِّي حَتَّى الصَّبَاحِ." So he used this food and drink and this provision from Allah to strengthen himself upon the worship of Allah. After he said this, he stood and he prayed the entire night, the Qiyamul Layl. He stood and prayed Qiyamul Layl. He says regarding zuhud, ليس الزهد بأكل الغليظ ولبس الخشن ولكنه قصر الأمل وارتقاب الموت. That zuhud is not to eat the most disgusting and lowest of foods, and it's not to eat the most lowest of clothes like the Sufis say. Rather, zuhud is not to have dreams and hopes and in this world, and to not and to always remember death, that death is around the corner, to not have long dreams and hopes of in this worldly life that I will do such and such after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. Rather, to always remember death, that death can occur at any time, to prepare for that event that will come without warning. This is the true zuhud, not to eat the worst of foods and to wear the worst of clothes. From the great positions of this great Imam in the matters of creed, that all these great Imams of the Salaf are unified upon, is that he says, Man asqa bi sam'ihi ila sahib bid'ah wa huwa ya'lam annahu sahib bid'ah kharaja min ismatillah wa wukila ila nafsi. That whoever gives his hearing and listens to a person of innovation, a misguided, deviant individual, and he knows that he is a person of misguidance, then he has left the protection of Allah Azza wa Jal, and he is left to himself. And he is left to himself. He says, Sufyan al-Thawri, Man sami'a min mubtadi' lam yanfa'ahu Allah bima sami'. That whoever listens to an innovator, whoever listens to a deviant, misguided person, Allah Ta'ala will not benefit him from that which he has heard. From that which he has heard. And this is proof of the great positions of the Salaf, that to shun the innovators and to stay far away from them, and to not to take knowledge from them, not to listen to them, not to attend their gatherings. And those people who claim that we only take the good from them and leave off the evil, in this statement of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah is a proof against them, that whoever hears an innovator, Allah Ta'ala will not benefit him with what he has heard. He will not benefit him, even if they claim that we have only heard the good and we only take the good. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, Al-bid'atu ahabbu ila iblis min al-ma'siyah. Al-ma'siyatu yutabu minha wal-bid'atu la yutabu minha. That verily innovation in the religion of Islam is more beloved to shaitan, to iblis, than sinning. Innovation is more evil and more beloved to shaitan than sinning. Why is that? He says, because sinning, a person sins, and he does it realizing that he has disobeyed Allah, that he is upon a wrong path, and he will or he might seek the forgiveness of Allah from it. But a person who innovates a matter in the religion, he does it thinking that he is upon goodness and upon guidance. So there is no forgiveness sought from innovation. An innovator, he does innovation thinking that he is upon goodness and righteousness. So there is no forgiveness that is taught from innovation. The opposite of this is that the Salaf, as we mentioned, they is to shun the innovators and stay far away from them, not to listen to them, not to take knowledge from them. The opposite is that from the signs of a person being upon the sunnah and upon the correct path is him staying in the presence of the people of the sunnah and attending their gatherings and learning from them. Imam Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, he says, Inni la ara ar-rajula yashabu Sufyan faya'azamu fi ayni. Verily, if I were to see a student of knowledge in the gatherings of Sufyan al-Thawri, he would be raised in my eyes in virtue and nobility. So this was the way of the Salaf of how to deal with the people of innovation. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, this is a great statement for us to ponder upon. He says, Istawsu bi ahli sunnati khayran fa innahum ghuraba. That give glad tidings to the people of sunnah, the Ahlul-Hadith, Ahlul Sunnah, give glad tidings to them, for verily they are ghuraba. They are strangers in our times. He is talking about a time of the atba'u tabi'in. He made this statement during the time of the atba'u tabi'in, that the people of sunnah, the people of hadith have become strangers. So what about our times? If he were to reach our times or witness our times, what would he say when Ahlul Sunnah and Ahlul Hadith are like a black hair on the back of a white ox? They are the most strangest of people and they're the most littlest of people. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, al-muradu bis-sawad al-azam hum man kana min ahli sunnati wal-jama'a walau wahidan. This is also, in this is a great correction of a misconception. He says, the Suwad al-Azam, the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned the Suwad al-Azam, the great majority, overwhelming majority of the Muslims in Ahadith. He says that they are those who are from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, upon the creed and methodology of Ahlul Hadith or Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, even if it was a single person. As-Suwad al-Azam, he is who is upon the methodology of Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, even if it was one person. So this is the criteria to determine what is Suwad al-Azam, not who is on the numbers that are following a particular methodology. As the Ash'aris today and the Hanafis, they claim that they are the Suwad al-Azam because they are the majority in the world, as they claim that their numbers are higher than any other groups and sects. But to the great Imams, the Suwad al-Azam is Ahlul Sunnah, Ahlul Hadith, even if it was one person. Then we move on to another point, which is the methodology of this great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri in matters of jurisprudence, in matters of worship, in matters of ahkam, the rulings of Islam, and his ittiba' of the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we mentioned this, that the great Imams we just covered, Imam Malik, Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna, they were Imams in the Sunnah, of following the Sunnah unconditionally and giving precedence to the Sunnah over the opinions of men. We mentioned the statements of Imam Malik, even though the people who came after him, they confined themselves to his statements and positions and views and blindly followed him. The Malikiyya, who followed the Maliki madhab, Imam Malik himself has freed himself from these people and has directed them to follow the hadith and directed them to leave off his statements and positions if they oppose the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here we will say Sufyan al-Thawri. Imam al-Shafi'i, who is also one of the Imams whose madhab is blindly followed, Shafi'iyya, he says regarding his teacher and scholar Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, مَا رَأَيْتُ بِالْكُوفَةِ رَجُلًا أَتْبَعَ لِلسُّنَّةِ وَلَا أَوَدُّ أَنِّي فِي مِسْلَاخِهِ مِنْ Sufyan al-Thawri. He says that verily I have not seen in Kufa a person more stern and strong in following the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam than Sufyan al-Thawri. And I did not see a person that I wish that I was following his path in this following of the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, except Sufyan al-Thawri. That I wish that I would follow him in this path of following the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being stern upon it. Imam al-Awza'i, from the great students of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, who passed away before him, as we mentioned, but he's heard hadith from him, narrated from him. He says, لو قيل لي اختر لهذه الأمة رجلا يقول فيها بكتاب الله وسنة نبيه صلى الله عليه وسلم لاخترت لهم سفيان الثوري. That if it was said to me to single out a person, from the Islamic nation in his era, in his time, who unconditionally followed and said and ruled by the book of Allah and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I would have selected Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah. Sufyan al-Thawri, to see his unconditional following of the Sunnah and his love and his diligence and zeal to do so, he says, an example of this, he says, ما بلغني عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حديث قط إلا عملت به ولو مرة. That I did not hear a hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not reach me except that I acted upon it. Yarhamakumullah. Except that I acted upon it, even if it was a single time. Even if it was a single time. We learn from this great benefits that this knowledge, as we mentioned, is for action. This knowledge is not just for the sake of seeking knowledge to stand or sit in front of the people and have the eyes, vision of the people towards you and to gain popularity and to gain status. And other than that, this knowledge is for the sake of action, as we learn inshallah soon from great statements of Sufyan al-Thawri. We also learn the methodology of these great Imams of the Salaf in implementing the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam unconditionally and following it. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, a hadith would reach me, I would follow it, even if it was for a single time. He did not say that I would consult with so and so or look to the opinion of such and such Imam. Rather, he said that I would follow it and implement it even if it was a single time. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, يَنْبَغِي لِلرَّجُلْ أَلَّا يَحُقَّ رَأْسَهُ إِلَّا بِأَثَرٍ, that it is befitting that a person, if he could, then he should not even scratch his head except by way of a athar or a hadith that he has in his possession and memory. That everything that he should do, it should be in line of following the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everything he does, it should be in relation to a hadith and Sunan of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From the great examples is that it was said to him, إِلَى مَتَى تَطْلُبَ الْحَدِيثِ فَقَالَ وَأَيُّ خَيْرٍ أَنَا فِيهِ خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْحَدِيثِ فَأَسِيرُ إِلَيْهِ إِنَّ الْحَدِيثَ خَيْرُ عُلُومِ الدُّنْيَا. That Sufyan al-Thawri, he was said, until when will you seek the knowledge of hadith? Until when? When you seek hadith and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, and what is better? What is better than hadith, so that I might turn towards it? What is better? Inform me of something better than hadith, so I might turn towards it. Inna al-haditha khayru ulumi dunya. Really, the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best of the sciences of this entire world. Is the best of the sciences of this entire world. For really, every science, tafsir, fiqh, the exegesis of the Quran, the jurisprudence in matters of the religion, and other sciences, they all revolve around the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tafsir cannot be done of the Quran except by way of the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jurisprudence, understanding in this religion, cannot be derived except by the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If the hadith is established and authentic, then one can use that to explain the book of Allah and to derive rulings from it. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he has his great statement. He says, "Al-isnadu silahul mu'min, faman lam yakun lahu silah, fabi-ayyi shay'in yuqatil." That the isnad, the hadith, the chain of narration and authentic hadith, it is a weapon of the believer. It is a weapon of the believer. So if he does not have this weapon, he does not have the isnad, he does not have knowledge of hadith, he does not have hadith and his chain in his possession, then with which weapon will he fight and defend himself? Really, this hadith and the isnad and the chain of narration is a shield, is a protection, and it is something that a believer uses to safeguard his religion. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he says 3 times, إِنَّمَا الدِّينُ بِالْآثَارِ لَيْسَ بِالرَّأْيِ إِنَّمَا الدِّينُ بِالْآثَارِ لَيْسَ بِالرَّأْيِ إِنَّمَا الدِّينُ بِالْآثَارِ لَيْسَ بِالرَّأْيِ. That verily, religion of Islam is based upon athar, upon ahadith and the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jurisprudence and fiqh is gained from sunnah and ahadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not from rai, not from personal opinions and positions and fatwa of the scholars. He repeated this 3 times. Why would he stress this? The point is that he lived in the city of Kufa, as we mentioned, and Kufa was at that time in his era from the strongholds, rather the center of the Ahlul Rai, the Hanafiya. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and his school of thought was the most prevalent school of thought in Kufa. He resided in Kufa and his major students resided in Kufa. And they had given precedence to Rai, and their methodology was to derive rulings and extract rulings in the ahkam of Islam, in the religious matters and the worship matters of Islam, from fatwa and statements and rulings of Imam Abu Hanifa and his students, and to give precedence to that over the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the point that Al-Fudail ibn Iyad rahimahullah, he says, كان سفيان الثوري والله أعلم كان سفيان الثوري والله أعلم من أبي حنيفة. Al-Fudail ibn Iyad, he says, verily Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah was more knowledgeable than Imam Abu Hanifa. We have just mentioned the great statements of the great scholars of Islam, the foremost scholars of the Salaf, the scholars of the Tabi'een from his teachers, and the scholars of the Atba'u Tabi'een from his contemporaries, and the scholars from the Tabi'ul Atba' who came after them. The great status that he reached in the science of Hadith, in the science of Islam, and being an Imam from the Imams of the Muslims. So these four madhahib that we have amongst our possession, amongst our midst today, the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa, the madhab of Imam Malik, the madhab of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, these are not just the four Imams of Islam. And their schools of thoughts are not just the four madhahib that existed. Rather, great Imams have passed before them. Great Imams have come along with them. And great Imams have come after them. Great Imams have come after them. And there were several madhahib that existed. From them was the madhab of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. But these madhahib, they died off over time, because political factors and other reasons enabled these four madhahib to spread around the world. So the way of the Ahlul Sunnah, the way of Ahlul Hadith, their methodology is to respect and revere all of these Imams. Is to respect and revere all of these Imams. All of them are from our Imams. And we take their statements, we understand the Quran and the Sunnah, taking aid by way of their statements. We take the haqq, that which is in agreement to the Quran and the Sunnah, from any of these Imams. We might take it from Imam Abu Hanifa, and we might take it in another position, another matter from Imam Malik, and in another matter we might take it from Imam al-Shafi'i, and in another matter we might take it in Imam Ahmad, and in another matter we might take it from, example, Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan al-Thawri, and other than them. We take from the Quran and the Sunnah, and whoever from these Imams agreed with the Quran and the Sunnah, then we are with them. Then we are with them. And the other Imams who have ruled with another ruling, then we make excuses for them. And their ijtihad, their exertion in extracting this ruling, they'll be rewarded for. They'll be rewarded for, and their mistake will be forgiven. As the Prophet ﷺ, he informed in authentic hadith that a mujtahid, someone who rules in the matters of the religion, then he is of various categories. From it is that he makes ijtihad exertion and he reaches the truth. So he gets two rewards, the rewards of his effort and the reward of reaching the truth. And there's the mujtahid who exerts himself, but even after that he does not reach the correct position. So he'll get the reward of his exertion and his mistake will be forgiven. His mistake will be forgiven. So in this is a proof for us of the methodology of these great Imams. And as we mentioned, that the scholars, they used to mention these kind of statements to show that Islam does not revolve around one Imam. That if you're Hanafi, then Islam is just what Imam Abu Hanifa said and in his madhab. Or if you're Shafi'i, then Islam is what Imam Shafi'i said and whatever his positions were. He says here, Sufyan al-Thawri was higher in knowledge by Allah, he swore, by min Imam Abu Hanifa. We just mentioned a few minutes ago these great statements of Imam Ahmad. He asked his students, do you know who the Imam is? Who is the Imam of our times? He said, Al-Imam, atadri man al-Imam? Al-Imamu Sufyan al-Thawri. La yataqaddamuhu ahadun fi qalbi. Verily the Imam is Sufyan al-Thawri. No one takes precedence over him in my heart. We just mentioned this statement a few minutes ago. This is one of the Imams that is blindly followed today. And those blind followers of the Hanbali madhab, they deem Imam Ahmad as to be the only scholar, and they confine themselves to his statements and his positions, and have fanatism towards him and his madhab. He himself says that, do you know who the Imam is? Did he say it's me? It is only me, as the blind followers say. He says the Imam is Sufyan al-Thawri. The Imam is Sufyan al-Thawri. No one takes precedence in my heart over him. No one takes precedence in my heart over him. And today, the blind followers of this Imam, the Hanabila, if you say this statement that Imam Sufyan al-Thawri takes precedence over Imam Ahmad, it might be as if Yawm al-Qiyamah has been established for them. From the returning back to this statement that verily Fudail ibn Iyad, he swore by Allah, Sufyan al-Thawri is more knowledgeable than Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahumullah. And Imam Abu Hanifa is from the students of Sufyan al-Thawri. Imam Abu Hanifa is from the students, even though he passed away before Sufyan al-Thawri, but he is from those people who attended his gatherings and heard hadith from him and narrated it on his authority due to the great stature that Imam Sufyan al-Thawri reached in this science. Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahullah says, "Ma ra'aytu rajulan a'lamu bil halal wal haram min Sufyan." That I have not seen a scholar who is more knowledgeable about halal and haram, permissible and impermissible matters of fiqh and jurisprudence than Sufyan al-Thawri. Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he said this regarding Sufyan al-Thawri. Sufyan ibn Uyayna said this regarding Sufyan al-Thawri. Imam Abbas al-Duri rahimahullah, he says, رأيت يحيى بن معين لا يقدم على سفيان أحدا في زمانه في الفقه والحديث والزهد وكل شيء. From the foremost students of the great Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in, whose biography we will cover in our future classes, inshallah, Abbas al-Duri, he says that Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in, the Imam al-Jarh wat-Tadeel of praising and criticizing the narrators of hadith, he said that Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in did not used to give precedence to anyone in his era over Sufyan al-Thawri. In what matters? In just hadith, he was just a muhaddith, as the blind followers of the mazahib claim, and the people who fanatically follow this mazahib, that the scholars of hadith, they just had hadith. They were just memorizers and narrators of hadith. They had no fiqh in the religion. They had no understanding in the religion. The understanding is with the fuqaha. The understanding is with the fuqaha. Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in, he says that no one takes precedence over Sufyan al-Thawri in his era, in hadith, in fiqh, in zuhud, and in everything else, in every matter of the religion. Imam al-Zahabi, we'll conclude with this. Imam al-Zahabi, rahimahullah, says in Sirah A'lam al-Nubula, قد كان سفيان رأسا في الزهد والتأدب والخوف، رأسا في الحفظ، رأسا في معرفة الألفاظ، رأسا في الفقه، لا يخاف في الله لومة لائم من أئمة الدين. That Sufyan al-Thawri, he was a leader, a foremost head in matters regarding zuhud and fear of Allah Azza wa Jal. He was also the foremost leader and head in matters related to preservation and memorization of hadith and knowing his words. He was also the head and from the foremost of scholars in matters of fiqh, of jurisprudence. And he did not used to fear anyone in the cause of Allah Azza wa Jal. He was from the imams of this religion. So this shows that these great imams, all of them are our ai-imma. We do not blindly follow any one of them. We do not have fanatism towards any one of them, thereby diminishing the status of the other imams. We respect all of them. We give them their due right. We follow the Quran and the Sunnah in light of their, in taking aid by way of their statements. Take that which is in agreement with the Quran and the Sunnah, and leave off that which is in disagreement, while making dua that Allah Ta'ala rewards them for their ijtihad, for their effort, and forgives them their mistake. These were all great imams of the Salaf and of the Muslims. And I think we should take a break here. If there's any questions, then you can ask them.
Sheikh, we talked a little bit about the Ghurba.
No.
I'm aware the Sheikh al-Bani had said before he passed away that now when the Ghurba al-Thani, can you comment a little bit about the timing of his statement and all the 1,000 years that went by? Why is the Sunnah more strange now than it was maybe 200, 300, 500 years ago? What he meant by that statement?
I mean, Allahu Alam, I personally do not know of such a statement. But of course, I mean, without a doubt, anyone with a sound intellect can see that the people who follow the Quran and the Sunnah upon the understanding of the Salaf, they are extremely rare and they are strangers in our times. in all Muslim societies and in all Muslim countries, the people of innovation, the people of misguidance, they are the majority, but rather the overwhelming majority. You rarely find the Ahlul Hadith, the Ahlul Sunnah, the Salafis, except in small, extremely small numbers. And this center that we are sitting in, this is a proof of that, in comparison to the big masajid that you have in the city of the people of innovation, such as the Jamaat-ul-Tabligh, the Deobandis, and the Ikhwanul Muslimin, the Jamaat Islami, and the Barelvi Sufis, and the Shia, the Rafida, and the other various sects and groups. So the Ahlul Sunnah, the Ahlul Hadith, the Salafis, they are the smallest of people. And as we see that the great Imams, they faced this in their times. And even with this, they encouraged us and motivated us to stay upon this path, no matter who opposes us, by saying that you are upon the right path and you are the safe sect and the aided group, even if you are a single person. Even if you're a single person. Because your relationship is with Allah Azza wa Jal. These people who oppose you, they cannot benefit or harm you in the least. They cannot benefit you or harm you in the least. So we have to remain steadfast on this path, even if we are few. And in us being few is barakah, and a few of the people on the right path are more heavy in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal than thousands of people upon misguidance. Than thousands of people upon misguidance.
Well, where I get it from, Sheikh, is Dawuti in the old days, his cassette company used to be called al-Thawri. It was on, I said, I'll go to my office.
أحسنتم.
I'll see if I have a
جزاكم الله خير.
Sheikh, as you said, it is said about Sufyan al-Thawri that he was Amirul Mu'minin of al-Hadith.
Yeah.
But it's also said that he used to do Tadlis in some of the books, right? So why does like a Thiqa Rawi does Tadlis, and is it to teach his students, or can there be some other?
This is a great question, which is a detailed question, and it will force us to enter this science, the science of Mustalah al-Hadith, Usul al-Hadith, and matters related to Tadlis. And I think we should leave that when the biography of Imam Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj comes. We'll touch about this topic of Tadlis in his biography, so inshallah we'll answer this question at that part, inshallah. Jazakallah.
So, as we know that he was in Kufa, right? But then, even though there is this scholar of Hadith, why did Kufa become like a stronghold of Ahlur?
As I said, there are political reasons. There are several other factors. The rulers who rule these lands, they forced the people upon this particular madhab, and no scholar who did not follow this madhab, he could get any position in those lands. No qadi, judge, no alim scholar, no mudarris teacher, no imam, no muazzin, he would be appointed, except that he would declare himself to be a follower of this madhab. And we do not want to go into detail because we have already taken so much time, but Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, he was tested and he faced trials and tribulations in his lifetime from the rulers of those times. He lived in a time of great instability in the Islamic nation. He lived in a time where the Banu Umayyah, they lost power to the Banu Abbasiyah, where the Umayyad Caliphate fell to the Abbasid Caliphate, and great bloodshed and great trials and tribulations occurred in that era, especially in the lands of Iraq where he resided. So he was afflicted and trialed and tested, and there are various stories. I mean, these short lectures can only allow us to focus on some aspects of these great Imams' lives. Otherwise, we would need days for a single of these great Imams. So he was afflicted and trialed, and he lived in a state of hiding for most of his life. And he also passed away in a state of hiding. And as we'll mention when the topic of his death, rahimahullah, comes, that he passed away and they buried him at night, hiding him and hiding the news of his death. So these scholars, even though they existed in those lands, but the political factors and other reasons did not give them their due right and position. And the people other groups and sects, they came into power and they ruled those lands.
Is that because the issue of the Khalif al-Quran?
There are several other innovations that occurred in those times. Imam Ahmad, who is greater than him? Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In his time, the Mu'tazila, they came into power. The Abbasid Caliphate, he came after Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. He's a student of the students of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri. And they started to force the people upon this belief of the Mu'tazila. And he was also tried and tested, which is a well-known story. And we'll mention that inshallah when his biography comes. So these great Imams, they did not have shortcomings in conveying the responsibility that they had on their shoulders. They preserved the religion for us. They conveyed the religion correctly to us, and this is what Allah Ta'ala had made as a responsibility upon them. We should take a break now and we'll continue inshallah after the break. So we return back inshallah to the biography of this great Imam, the Imam of the region of Kufa in the era of the Tabi'in, from the major scholars of the Salaf, from the major scholars of the Tabi'in, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah. We will now mention some of his great statements in which are ample lessons for us where we can benefit from these statements and reflect and ponder upon them. From these statements are those that relate to the correction of one's intention and to seek knowledge and to worship Allah Azza wa Jal solely for the sake of Him alone. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, "Ma amalun afdalu min al-hadithi idha sahhat an-niyya," that I do not know of any action that is better than seeking the knowledge of hadith, seeking hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the condition that it is along with a correct intention, that it is done for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, for the hereafter. He says also that on regarding hadith and the science of hadith, مَا يَعْدِلُهُ شَيْئًا لِمَنْ أَرَادَ بِهِ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَ, that nothing compares to hadith and seeking the knowledge of hadith for the one with this condition who seeks Allah Azza wa Jal and His pleasure. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, from the foremost students of Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, قال لي سفيان إياك والشهرة فما أتيت أحدا إلا وقد نهى عن الشهرة. That he advised his students, from the foremost of them, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, that beware of popularity, beware of seeking popularity by way of seeking this knowledge. I did not visit anyone from my teachers, from the great scholars of the Tabi'een and Atba'u Tabi'een and other than them. I did not enter upon anybody except that he warned me from seeking popularity. So this is the correct methodology of seeking knowledge near these great scholars of the Salaf, that it should be done for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal alone, for the hereafter, not in order to gain hold of the gatherings and to sit in front of the people so that they can gather in large numbers, thereby reaching celebrity status or popularity and other reasons. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, أقل من معرفة الناس تقل غيبتك, that stay away from the people, hide your actions, so that the criticism that you receive from the people also decreases. This is from the great wisdoms of this Imam, that the person who mingles with people and he puts himself out to the people, then the criticizers of this person will increase manyfold. Those people who will take his statements and his actions and then criticize him, they will increase. But the person who stays away and keeps his statements and actions hidden, then his criticism will decrease. He has not put him out to the people to make him a point of attack. A point of attack. This is the benefits of having ikhlas and sincerity for Allah, and hiding your good deeds and hiding your actions. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, as-salamatu fi an la tuhibba an tu'araf. That safety for a person's iman is in desiring for you to not be known. Safety of a person's religion in Islam lies in the fact that he desires that he not be known. He hides his actions and his good deeds and his statements. Then from his statements are those that give proof to what we just alluded to in the previous minutes, that seeking this knowledge with the sincerity of Allah Azza wa Jal is to act upon it. And the person who increases in this knowledge, he increases the proof of Allah Azza wa Jal upon him. He increases the proof of Allah upon him. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, وَدَدْتُ أَنَّ عِلْمِي نُسِخَ مِنْ صَدْرِي لَسْتُ أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُسَلَ غَدًا عَنْ كُلِّ حَدِيثٍ رَوَيْتُهُ إِيش أَرَدْتَ بِهِ. That I wish that the knowledge that I had gained, that it would be erased from my memory, from my heart. I do not want to be asked by Allah Azza wa Jal on the day of judgment for every hadith that I have learned, that I have gained knowledge of, then I have narrated and relayed, that what did you do with it? What did you do with it? Did you put it into action or not? He says, rahimahullah, ma akhafu ala shay'in an yudkhilani an-nar illa al-hadith. That I do not fear anything greater than hadith that will enter me into the hellfire. That will enter me into the hellfire. What does he mean by this? Is not to act upon this knowledge that he had gained, not to act upon the knowledge of the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he had in his possession. And he used to say, Man yazid ilman yazid waja'an walau lam a'lam kana aysar al-huzn. That whoever increases his knowledge increases in despair and increases in troubles. And if I did not seek this knowledge, it would be the least of my problems. That I wish that I had not gained all this knowledge, so it will be the least of my problems. Meaning, giving proof to the fact that a person, he has to act upon the knowledge that he has gained. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, rahimahullah, he says, from the great scholars of the Salaf, from the great scholars of Hadith, whose biography we'll cover inshallah in the coming lectures, he says, مَا رَأَيْتُ رَجُلًا أَفْضَلَ مِنْ سُفْيَانَ لَوْلَا الْحَدِيث كَانَ يُسَلِّي مَا بَيْنَ الظَّهْرِ وَالْعَصْرِ وَبَيْنَ الْمَغْرِبِ وَالْعِشَاءِ فَإِذَا سَمِعَ مُذَاكَرَةَ الْحَدِيثِ تَرَكَ الصَّلَاةَ وَجَاءَ. That I did not see anyone better than Sufyan al-Thawri. Anyone who I gained knowledge from my teachers, from my scholars, who was better than Sufyan al-Thawri. If it was not for the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for this knowledge, then you would find him praying between Dhuhr and Asr, and praying between Maghrib and Isha. But if he would hear revision of hadith, and the students of hadith have entered and have gathered, then he would leave that, the prayer between Dhuhr and Asr and between Maghrib and Isha, and he would come to narrate and teach them the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this is proof is that the best of the most virtuous of the deeds after the obligatory acts is seeking knowledge. The most virtuous of deeds from the voluntary deeds, acts of worship, after the obligatory acts of worship, is seeking knowledge. The Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he would leave the voluntary prayers between Dhuhr and Asr and between Maghrib and Isha if the gathering of a hadith was formed, so that he could teach the people and convey this knowledge to them. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he says, Inni la ara al-munkar fala atakallam fa'akadu abulu daman. That if I were to see an evil and I do not speak, I remain silent, then it would make me sick to a point that I would urinate blood. if I were to see an evil and I would not correct it, I would not speak, it would make me sick to the point that I would urinate blood. In this also is a lesson for us that a person who sees an evil and he's able to change that evil by way of his hand or by way of his tongue, then he should not remain silent and he should change and try to change that evil. That he should change that evil. Today we see countless evils done in positions that we are able to change those evils, such as in our households, amongst our families and amongst our wives and children, where we see an evil, where we see a wrong deed that is opposing to the rulings of Islam, but we remain silent. But we remain silent where we have the ability in that position to change that evil, to stop that evil. So these Imams took this responsibility to such an extent that if they were to remain silent, then he would become sick to such an extent. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri also says, Man surra bid-dunya nuzi'a khawful akhirah min qalbi. That whoever is pleased with this worldly life, this temporary worldly life, then the fear of the hereafter will be removed from his heart. The fear of the hereafter will be removed from his heart. So love of this worldly life cannot combine with fear of the hereafter. It cannot be combined with fear of the hereafter. قال رجل لسفيان أوصني فقال اعمل للدنيا بقدر بقائك فيها وللآخرة بقدر مقامك فيها. That one of the people, he said to Sufyan al-Thawri, advise me, give me an advice. So he said, work for this worldly life, indulge yourself in the affairs of this worldly life to the extent of your stay in this worldly life, and work for the hereafter. Indulge yourself in the affairs of the hereafter to the extent of your stay in the hereafter. To the extent of your stay in the hereafter. A person should work in this worldly life with the affairs of this world just to the extent of the stay, a temporary lifetime that he has in this worldly life. But his focus, it should be to work for the everlasting life of the hereafter. That should take precedence than the pleasures of this worldly life. We'll conclude with the death of this great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah. As we mentioned, that he lived in a time of great trials and tribulations, especially in the region of Iraq, and he lived a large part of his life changing cities and traveling from cities to cities and hiding from the authorities and the people who looked to harm him in that time, to a point that he reached the city of Basra, and he passed away in the city of Basra, and he was washed and buried at night without letting many people know, in order to hide his janazah. But even with that, as is the sign of the people of the Sunnah and Ahle-Hadith, that a large number of people attended his gathering, his janazah at night. And Abdurrahman ibn Abdul Malik al-Kufi rahimahullah, he prayed upon him his Salatul Janazah, and this was his wasiyah, this was in his will, that he should pray upon him due to his righteousness. And his death occurred in the month of Sha'ban in the year 161 after the Hijrah. In the year 161 after the Hijrah. Imam Hamad ibn Zayd, from the great Imams whose biographies also we will study inshallah in the future, he, from the great Imams of Basra, he came, attended when the news of his death reached him. He attended and he saw Imam Sufyan al-Thawri in his coffin before he was buried. So he said, Ya Sufyan, lastu ughbituka al-yawm bi kathrat al-hadith wa innama bi amalin salih qaddamt. That verily, O Sufyan, that I do not have envy or jealousy of you with the quantity of ahadith that you had memorized and narrated and related, rather with your righteous actions and your worship of Allah that you left behind, that you acted upon. And with this, we have concluded the biography, a brief, extremely brief biography of this great Imam from the Imams of the Atba'u Tabi'een, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah. If anyone has any questions, then you can ask them.
You said you will narrate his story of death.
I mean, I said that we have left off a lot of events and stories that occurred in his lifetime, because that will take the entire time and even more time that we do not have. But we just briefly mentioned to you that he led a life of hiding for the later part of his life, and the rulers of those times, they were looking for him, their agents were looking for him, and they tried to harm him. And this is the reasons that he died away from Kufa in Basra, and they prayed over him at night in hiding.
Sheikh, you said the same thing about praying in the night. Isn't it from the sunnah to do the janazah in the night?
I mean, it is permissible, but of course in the daytime, the number of people who could gather and it being apparent to the people, it is not the same as in the nighttime. I mean, when the scholars, they mentioned that they prayed over him at night to hide his janazah, because they lived in a time where these blessings and electricity and these means were not at their disposal. So in those times, something that was done in night was more hidden from the people than something that was done in the daytime. This is why they mentioned that they prayed over him at night, because that caused his janazah to be more hidden than it would be at daytime, where people would see it and then attended in great numbers.
So what was the year when he died?
161. 161 after the hijrah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.